From California to Oklahoma, two pre-dentals who became best friends.
We're here to have fun, share stories, and inspire others to never give up on their dreams of becoming a dentist.
I'm Dominique.
And I'm Maddy.
And we're your dental mentors. Hey, future doctors.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back.
We are going to get into some really exciting stuff today. Today's episode is all about the dental admission test, otherwise known as the DAT. And this is a place that Maddy and I have traveled to a few times each. And we are stoked to get into all of this and super hopeful that this information helps you, because we had to figure all of this out on our own, and we know how tough that can be. And it's something we don't want other pre-dental students to have to go through by themselves. And this is just going to be a lot of information, but if you need to, grab a pen, grab a piece of paper, write all this stuff down. It will help you in the long run.
Yes, completely agree. So the DAT, the DAT, the dental admissions test, you may hear us refer to it as any of those, but it's all the same thing. And for those who are unaware, it is the test required for students to be able to apply or matriculate into dental school. So if you're familiar with the MCAT, that is the admissions test for future medical students. The DAT is pretty similar to that to a certain extent, but luckily not as long. But it is still a really long test. It's 4.5 hours, and then you're allotted a 30-minute break halfway through. So 5 hours altogether. And it's a long test, but you work up the endurance to be able to do that before you take it. And there's several different sections that we will also go into.
Yes. So first place we really need to start that is important to touch on, because I think the biggest thing for Maddy and I when applying, at least for me, the very first time I was applying to take my test, it was like, where do I even go to apply to take the test? Because there's a lot.
It's so confusing. Yeah.
There are so many avenues and links and things to click to get you there. But before you can even apply to take this test, you must obtain a dent pin, which is an 8-digit code that enables you to take the DAT. And you obtain this through the ADA, so the American Dental Association. You can go to their website, you sign up for a dent pin, and it does take about 1 to 3 days for the dent pin application process. So just be aware that when you are applying to take this test, things are not immediate. It does take a couple days, sometimes a week, to get everything set and scheduled. So just be aware it's not a snap your fingers process. It can take a little bit of time. So once you do have your valid dent pin, you can take the DAT, and the DAT is offered year round, and it's offered by Prometric testing centers in the United States. So you just are able to plan your DAT for when, you feel like is best for you. It's not like the MCAT. For the MCAT, there's certain times of the year it's scheduled. The DAT, it's whenever is best for you. And you don't just have to apply to take the test in your general area. I know for me, whenever I applied to take my test, the first 2 times I flew home and took my test in Las Vegas. And the second 2 times that I took my DAT, I took it here in Oklahoma, where I'm at right now. So you are able to, sometimes the testing dates don't pop up when they're best for you, and you may have to just look around, especially between the months of like June to August. The dates within those times get taken very quickly. So first thing, like I said, is to obtain your dent pin in order to even apply to take the test.
Yeah, I agree. And hold on to that dent pin. You definitely put it in your notes in your phone or wherever is a place that is safe, because you will refer back to that dent pin time and time again throughout the application process. And so super important to just hold on to that. Also, I would say typically the average student will take the exam or the DAT, following their junior year or after completing their junior year of college. And that was not the case for me or Dominique, I'm pretty sure. And so,
no, I actually did take it after my junior year. Mm-hmm.
Oh, you did?
I took it, yep, after junior year that summer. That's when I studied all summer long and then took my test in August.
So typically you would take it after your junior year or sometime during your junior year, and then you apply to dental school. And that way, as soon as you graduate a year later from undergrad, your senior year, then you can matriculate the next, summer or fall for dental school. So there's no gap years. But that, for both Dominique and I was not the case. We did have gap years and had to take or retake, in Dominique's case, the DAT post college. Retake for me as well, but I had taken it after I had finished all of my studies. So just know, you can still take it afterwards, but typically students do take it junior year of college.
Yes, it is more common for students to study, and some students I know study during their spring semester in order to take that test in the fall. And I would just say, if you feel like doing that is going to hinder you from getting good grades in your classes, it's not the best choice. And I just want to preface that taking a gap year is okay. You have to be personally okay with that type of study schedule and being okay going straight from, you've been in school your whole life, you've gone through high school, through undergrad, and you have to be mentally prepared for getting into dental school and diving into something that is 4 times harder and more trying and, difficult in every aspect, and doing that right after you're done with school. So if you feel like taking a gap year and you want to focus on your test, after you're finished with school, that is okay. I think Maddie and I can both attest to gap years being great things. I think you learn a lot along the way, and you can really focus on the DAT. You can also focus on making and building your application, because it is not a quick thing. Nothing in this process of dental school is fast. It takes a long time, and it's very detail oriented. So you don't want to just rush through and just try and get in just because you have to. So if you do have that time and a gap year is something you've thought about, I will always say it's the better option. I just want to put that in there because I feel like gap years are not talked about enough, that they are great things and to take advantage of them.
I think there's a big misconception that people think gap years are frowned upon or looked down upon by dental schools. And I think that is very far from the truth. I think you just need to be ready to answer what you were doing during those gap years to help improve your
Exactly.
application, whether it is a post-bac, a master's degree, a studying for the DAT while gaining experience working in a dental office, or doing research or volunteer work or whatever it is. It's better to, it's a marathon. It's, just not is how quickly you can get there. And I think just making sure your application all around is polished and is the best of your abilities is the best thing that you can do. So don't compare yourself to others, run your own race, and just continue at your own pace of whatever that looks like to you. And it's at the end of the day, you will get there. And with that being said, I think now is an appropriate time to be able to dive into each of the sections and what this test entails. So I'll start and we'll kind of like flip flop back. So, going into the sections of what the dental admission test consists of, it is in this exact order and will always be in this exact order. So we're just going to do it chronologically of what section will come first, which would be the natural sciences, which includes biology, general chemistry, as well as organic chemistry. And there are certain test questions within each of those sections.
So the natural sciences portion of the test, as Maddie said, it's the first bulk. So this is actually the longest time period of your test as far as questions go. It is a 90-minute time block. Within that 90 minutes, you go from 40 biology questions straight into 30 general chemistry questions. And after that, you go straight into 30 organic chemistry questions. But within that section, you are able to flip from one section to the next. Like, let's say you finish all of your biology. You get to your general chemistry and you're not sure about some questions. You can move into organic chemistry and come back to your general chemistry after. So you have free range to go in and out of all of the questions on the test. But I would say the biggest thing, especially when studying, is making sure you have the time down, which we'll get into studying time too, because this is just a big chunk of tests and it's a lot of questions, and your brain can get very tired because there are going to be questions on there. Truthfully, I know there were things that I was like, I have not even seen these questions as far as the biology goes, because there is so much material when it comes to biology. So that's the biggest part of your test, is going to be the natural sciences. And then the section after that is the PAT section, which is the perceptual ability test. And this perceptual ability test is very different from what a lot of us have ever been tested on. I can definitely say it was my favorite section. And I
Mine
know,
too. Yeah.
yes, it was Maddie's as well. This is where we both excelled. It makes so much sense to my brain. And I think it's like a left brain, right brain situation. You know, the people who really understand the sciences don't necessarily understand PAT as well, and vice versa. So we loved PAT. If anyone needs any help with it, I am there. It is so much fun to me. Like, I actually thought it was a game. It was like just the blast. So this part of the test is 60 minutes long, and this is comprised of 90 questions. So 60 minutes for the PAT section, and it is 90 questions total. So each of there's like subtests within the PAT section, and it is related to three-dimensional manipulation and spatial reasoning. I know that might sound like a bunch of gibberish right now, but once you really start getting into the DAT, you'll understand exactly what that means, because it's a lot of things you've probably never done. There is hole punching, there is top front end, there's keyholes, there is paper folding, cube counting. Like, there is so many different things on that part of the test, but I thought it was just so much fun. So that is the first half of your DAT, and that whole time takes up like 3 hours worth of your time. And then right after that, you can choose the option to take a 30-minute break. When you're at the Prometric Testing Center, you can go to your locker. You're able to like grab your phone if you need to. I personally packed a lunch for mine and had a snack because I knew I would need something to keep my brain going, because sitting there and exhausting yourself for that long, it can be really hard. But I know some people don't like to eat at all. They just like to sit there and breathe for a little bit. But I decided to have a little snack, go to the bathroom, and make sure I was ready to go for the next section. So
Yeah, the paper folding or hole punching was probably my least favorite of it. It took a little bit longer for my brain to wrap my mind around how to do that section, and took a little bit more brain power, so to speak, for that particular section of the PAT. But I agree, it totally felt like a game. It was my favorite thing to study. But I would say if you do excel in PAT, don't sleep on it as it comes closer to the exam. You don't want to be out of practice by the time it is actual test day and you go in and you have a lot of confidence in that exam. But you could be out of practice for timing, because I think as long as you understand how to do the different sections, this one is where timing can be really tricky for a lot of students, because you're doing 90 questions in 60 minutes. And so you don't want to spend too much time on a single question, or you really don't have time to double check. You just kind of have to get good at trusting your instincts, trusting your skills, and picking what you think is the best answer and moving on, because you don't want to get in a sticky situation where you are triple checking your answers and then you have 30 plus questions unanswered by the end of the time, allotted time. So just be careful with that. And I agree. I think you're full of nerves during the break portion. And I remember I wasn't even that hungry because I was just running on adrenaline, and I, am just very nervous for how the test outcome is going to be. And I'm thinking of the questions I've already answered and the questions to come. But I would say just even nibbling on a little something is better than nothing, because at the end of the exam, you realize how mentally drained you are and how extremely hungry and thirsty you are. So I would just, something to help satiate you and tie you over for the next part of the exam or the remaining portion. You're halfway there, but you want to finish strong. So the following section, after the break, so you've done the natural sciences, you've done the perceptual ability portion of the test, you've had your 30-minute break. And I also would just say, when you come back, give yourself, I wouldn't use like the full 30. Maybe set a timer on your phone or your watch or whatever you have for maybe 25 minutes or so. Use the bathroom and then get back in there. I would rather be sitting in front of the computer because you have to go through, it's kind of like a TSA process a little bit
Yes.
at the airport. Like
With the scanner.
exactly, like
The
they
metal
are gonna,
detector.
they're gonna have you roll up your sleeves, show your forearms, make sure that nothing is in your pockets, make sure you've left your phone and everything in your assigned locker that they give you. And so it takes a little bit to check back into the testing area again.
Well, and also with that too, there are other people testing. Like this is a testing center, so there are education people testing. There are even like some dental schools I've seen testing in there. Yes, like there is a ton of testing going on. So you have to allot time for, there could be a line for me to get back into my test. And that test starts regardless of you sitting at the computer or not. It is not a click of a button for you to move on unless you are in the chair in enough time and you can decide, okay, I'm ready to go. But once that 30-minute time period is done, the test starts. So you have got to allot for that extra time.
Yeah. And you are no special case. Things happen. And I've heard the test being super laggy in between questions, which it is. I think naturally in between questions, it takes about 2 seconds for the next question to load. Sometimes, with Wi-Fi or difference of each testing center, things happen. And I know you can send like an email or something in explaining something that happened, or at the end, we'll go into it later, but there is a survey you can take at the end and kind of talk about if anything happened. But like Dominique said, that test is going to start whether you are there or not. So you don't want to be sitting down just as it's starting and kind of be all over the place. So it's important that you are back, you are taking, some breathing exercises, relaxing that heart rate, getting it back down, and being ready for the next section, because the next section is a lot of brain power as well. I mean, every section is, but it is reading comprehension. And I also feel like this is a section where some students thrive and some students don't. Kind of the left brain, right brain thing that Dominique was saying. I completely agree. I think we both did very well in reading comprehension as well. And there are students who take this exam where English is not their first language. And this would be a very tricky section. I did the search and destroy method. If you don't know what that is, you can Google it, but essentially just reading the question, looking for keywords, and then thumbing through, scrolling through the story or the article that they give you and trying to find that. But that can be a little tricky because you want to really read the question. What is this question asking? Because it's not necessarily just finding keyword, and then answering. You need to understand what you are reading. And so I would kind of skim through the whole thing, read it once all the way through, and then did the search and destroy method. That's how I attacked that. I don't know, Dom, if you want to add anything to how you tackled that section.
Yeah, for the reading comprehension, I tried different things each time I took my test because the reading comprehension, one thing that they do suggest while you're studying, and at least on DAT bootcamp specifically, but there were mini articles that they said at least read one mini article every single day to train your brain to read through things with like in-depth scientific facts, just so that you're prepping yourself for these larger article. It's like 14 plus paragraph articles that you're reading that you have to answer questions over. And I decided to try the first time reading through the entire thing and then going through the questions. But a really cool tip is you can highlight certain key areas. So whenever I came across something that was a fact, like one of the practice tests on DT bootcamp talked about when the earth became like, when the earth started, and it's like however many billion years ago. And so I would like those types of facts. Or if it's numbers, like this submarine was yellow, like you just make sure like facts, you're like, okay, that's an important detail. Numbers, years, people's names, you can highlight those. That way when you're scrolling through, you see that over like a blur of all of these words in a paragraph. So what I ended up doing was reading the question that I had, at the very first question. And then I would like read through a couple paragraphs, and then I would answer all of the questions I could until I got to the next one. That is what helped me the most. I know everyone can do it so many different ways. Search and destroy. I mean, I kind of took, if I'm being honest, a little bit of every type of option they had and like combined it into one. I'm not sure how it worked, but that's just what worked best for me. And you just have to figure out when you are studying and you are taking the practice test, which option works best for you. And that would be one thing I would say when it does come to studying, making sure you are watching those videos, because you will learn great habits and ways to go about it that you maybe didn't think of. Because I think the first thing in people's heads is, oh, either you're on the side of, I'm just going to read everything and then answer the questions, or you're someone who's like, I'm going to read all the questions and then I'm going to answer them. So that does offer you some other options whenever you are looking into that.
Yeah, I think I also would, kind of a tip for the reading comprehension is I would trick myself and just say to myself, whatever, because you don't know the prompt they're going to give you. It could be about literally anything, and is typically, I want to say, is on the scale of like the sciences or biology or kind of something that is more of a scientific article usually. And so with that being said, I would just tell myself, like, whatever it is, like, this is something I'm so excited to read about. Kind of just trick my headspace or my mind of, oh my goodness, I can't believe I gotta get a read about this, which usually it was a total bore and I was like snoozing
Mine
through
was
the
like
whole thing.
volcanoes. I was like, oh my God.
Yes, like there are some things I'm like,
I got one
I
about
actually
dentistry
know
though.
nothing.
I
Oh,
got
you
one about
did?
dentistry. Yeah. My last DAT, I was like, oh, this is awesome. And I was like actually excited.
That's good. It's, and like mine, oh, they ranged so. I mean, I only took it twice, but it was very, very different each time. And I think that just having that mindset of like, I have to know this inside out, and I'm gonna, fake it till you make it kind of mentality of like, I'm gonna try to be really interested in what I'm reading, and hopefully it helps retain for the next section, which is everyone's favorite, not really, QR, or quantitative reasoning, which is the math section.
The best.
The best.
The best.
I hate math. I hate math so much. I'm the person who's like using my fingers, like, okay, wait.
I'm like, oh, so
I
no
had
calculator? Oh yeah, that's another thing we
Oh,
should say. You do not get a calculator on this test. So don't even think of
they
it.
they want you to suffer. And I like, if you're like me, you haven't taken a math class in years.
Yeah.
And I would say most of the things are, or most of the QR related questions are, it's a lot of like high school math, I
Yeah,
think.
it
And
is.
just
A lot of
knowing,
algebra.
your algebra, just kind of your standard, what you would just learn in an algebra class, and applying it. But it's doable, but I think it's just kind of memorizing. And there are different study material options out there that we will also talk about. But if you follow, at least on DAT Bootcamp, which if you're unfamiliar, don't worry, we'll cover it. But the QR section is typically kind of the last section that they cover, and it's the last section that you're tested on for the exam. And so I personally didn't make it through all of QR the first time I took it, but I did the second time, and it didn't make that big of a difference for me personally. But then again, math is not my strong suit, and so just something that I think practicing early on when studying for the DAT, if you know math is also not something you're naturally good at, is not a bad idea.
Yes, I definitely agree. That was an area that I also struggled with almost every single time of my test. I think 3 of the 4 times I did not get through all of the questions. I ended up, I think my last one, or was the third to last one, I ended up just answering questions, because something else that's interesting with the DAT is that every single question you answer, you basically, if it's a correct answer, you receive a point, and that goes to like a raw score in order to grade technically that section. And every answer that's wrong is not counted against you, but if they're unanswered, that's a different story. So you just want to answer everything, don't leave anything blank. And I know I had a couple tests where I had questions that were left blank because I had no time, and I just did not time it well. So QR is definitely one of those places where you can get questions that you're like, oh my gosh, this is totally easy. And then you'll get to some questions that you sit there forever trying to figure it out, that you've lost like multiple minutes of time that you could be using on other questions. And that is something I would say I very much struggled with. But at the same time, I was so focused on studying the biologies and the sciences that I really lacked studying for the QR portion of this test. So definitely within the study schedules, and I think it's for booster or boot camp, like Maddie said, we'll go over those, but they will tell you do some questions every single day, and it's for a reason. It's just to give you like quick recall of, this is this type of question, this is this type of question, because there's different methods to do all of the questions, because there are some within this area. For instance, I did not take trigonometry in college, in high school. I did not take it at all. And I don't want to say don't study it, but also it is like a well-known rule that if you've never taken the class, to spend the time to learn it is a waste of time, because you will maybe get 2 to 3 questions of trigonometry out of the 40 questions. 45 questions. And you have 40 minutes. You have 45 minutes with 40 questions. That's what it is. 45 minutes for 40 questions. And 2 or 3 of those being trigonometry, unless you're a math whiz and it makes sense and you can learn it, totally great. But honestly, I didn't waste my time trying to learn those, because everything else was going to be like, there was going to be larger quantities of other things like basic algebra problems and those type of questions that are going to be more important to learn than the trigonometry section. I don't want to be that person who's like, don't study that. But also at the same time, I think it's good that you understand there's a chance you're not going to get through everything, because it's a lot of a material, especially when you're studying and doing this on your own.
Also, I think it's kind of known across the board that dental students may not do as well for QR because we're so busy, like Dominique said, studying the biology and practicing for the PAT in the reading section. And it's kind of the last one left behind. And so some of us put it on the back burner. And from what I've seen, most schools accept a little bit of a lower score in QR. Now, not all schools, don't twist my words or think you don't have to study for it, but I've heard of tons of dental students having a 17 in that section and still getting into dental school. And so that's kind of across the board as well, in no specific section having anything lower than a 17 ideally, but just wanted to put that in there.
I will say I made a 15 or 16 every single time in my QR. Like, I want to be vulnerable about that, because while Maddie and I, we both did get into school, like she said, not to say those scores are not important, because every single score is important because they all add to your overall average. But it is possible to get in with lower scores like that, because you have to understand, like, we all can do basic math. That's something that they're not questioning, but they honestly want to see and test what all you know and how like quickly you can get through these problems. But it is difficult. It's very it just very much tests you in every way possible. So that is the final portion of the test. At this point, congratulations, you've completed your DAT. And after you finish the test, there are a series of text boxes that are on there that explain, okay, once you move on from this portion of the test, your test has been completed. And then there's a pop-up for a survey area. I think that happens before you get your scores back. And so it pops up and you can say what happened. Like, I know on one of my tests, the font on the computer was so big when I was going through reading comprehension that it made it so hard to get through my reading comprehension paragraphs, like my full articles, compared to other ones that I had taken. So there's little things like that you can put on there. You can even say there was a however many second delay from one question to the next question. And just along the way, if there are things you felt like would make it easier, then you can also explain that too, because they don't want this to be impossible for people. And if there are ways that they can make it easier, then they will. One thing I will mention is when you do take this test, you will receive a laminated, like 2 sheets of laminated paper with a dry erase marker that you can write on them for your math problems and even like chemistry problems. And you also receive a piece of paper that has some equations from the chemistries. So that is one thing that you can that you will have with your tests, because they don't expect you to remember everything. But if I'm being totally honest, most of my questions, like the equations they did offer, I didn't really end up using that sheet of paper too much, but those are things that you are given during your test. They also have headphones on the table if you need to wear them. I know that's how it was, at least at my location. I don't know if they had them for you, Maddie, but
Yes, and I used them even though they kind of gave me a headache.
Yeah.
It was just there because there are other people taking other exams there. I remember there was someone with a pen and they were just like tapping it, and it drove me insane. Or like the clicking of the keyboard,
Yes.
because their
People are
test, maybe they have
typing.
to write something. And
Mhm.
so I was just like, oh my gosh, what is going on? Like there's so much happening around me and I needed to focus. So I threw those bad boys on. And I wish there was like AirPods. You just
Yeah, I
have
know, with the noise canceling, because
the noise canceling. I wish, but
it's so
it was
quiet in
better
there, but
than
it
nothing.
also isn't. It's like it's so quiet that any sound is like exploited.
You can hear
like,
a pin drop.
You can
Yes.
hear a pin drop. Exactly. It's like one little thing happens. Someone could like sniff their armpit and you would hear them.
Oh my god.
Like it's
Anything
seriously.
happens.
But go ahead.
Your score pops up immediately after you are done taking the survey at the end of the exam.
And it does tell you you're going to be directed to your test scores so that you can mentally prepare your brain and your stomach before it falls out of your butt. Because I promise that happened to me every single time.
So I actually I like threw my hand up because you're not allowed to cover the screen.
Yes.
So the laminated paper or my hand, I can't remember which one, but I went up and then I clicked next and then I slowly went down section by section because it shows, like natural science, this is the score you got. PAT, this is the score you got. And you go down and then at the very end, it will say your academic average or your AA as well as your total science or your TS. And just going down one by one by one by one is like
you talking
it's
about
so exciting and so
not.
It's like PTSD, you guys, this exam. So the scores that you can get, they range from 1 all the way up to 30, 30 being the highest that you can score. So this is, very nerve-wracking, but it's nice because I know for the MCAT, you have to wait a month after taking the exam to know your score. So it's kind of bittersweet. You get to know immediately. You don't have to, go home and wait for a month. But also you get to know your score right after. So everyone's asking, what did you get? How'd it go? And sometimes if the test didn't go as well as you would have hoped, is not fun to, have to kind of deal with, or have to answer those questions. But I just think that, you do your best. It's a long test. Go reward yourself. No matter what the score is, you are more than a number and you need to just go and have some self-care, something to celebrate, look forward to, go out with family, go out with friends. Hopefully you are celebrating, but if not, you've got this podcast to lean back on. You have me and Dominique who can definitely relate, not scoring as well as you would have hoped. But on the ADA website or the American Dental Association, it says that a 19 typically signifies or is considered to be the national average. And as you may know, Dominique and I did not get a 19. We got under what the ADA is considering to be the national average, or a 19. We both scored an 18 as our highest. So even though it's, not good enough for other people or is not something other people would necessarily be proud of, me and Dominique are so proud of that 18. Like we wanted to stick it on our parents' fridge, kind of proud. And, it's just there's so much more to your application than a single test score. And I think that because this exam it's different than any other exam, as one, you're being tested on several different subjects at the same time, two, it being very long, but also three, it being an exam where you are not actively in a class for or have students around you or friends to study with typically, because you can take this exam, like Dominique said, at any time during the year. And maybe even someone from the pre-dental group at your school is not studying at the same time you are. If you do have someone to keep you accountable to study with, that is amazing. More power to you. That would be such a great asset to have. But that is something that me and Dominique did not have. But maybe, there may be someone who needs more help in one section and someone else is, you don't want to be hindered or held back from that. So I just think that that's what makes this such a tricky exam is, yes, material, of course, but just doing this journey alone for this specific portion of the application process, which is the exam. So I just like to think that this exam could have been done. I think I personally could have done better if I would have had a close group of friends to have studied with and have gone through those long days and long nights with. That's, in my opinion, not an excuse. I think that's the truth. I just do better with other people. I'm a social butterfly and I love to study with others. And so I think that's what the hardest part was for me, at least. I'm a little too extroverted to just be locked up in a room all day for 3 months straight studying for this exam, which is something we can talk about. Is typically you are given 3 months, depending on which resource you use to help you study, but typically it takes 3 months to study for this exam. And you may not need 3 months. You may need 4 or 5 months or 6 months or whatever, but go at your own pace. Everyone learns differently. And I think that that is super important. Maybe you're burnt out by, close to 3 months and you just feel the need to take the test sooner. Whatever that may be, whatever that looks like to you, you need to do what's best for you.
Yes, I agree. I do want to share our test scores just one more time because I know sometimes things can kind of get lost within both of our stories because there's just a lot of information. So I took the DAT 4 times. I believe, Maddie, you took it twice. 2 times. Mm-hmm. Okay. So the first time I took my DAT, I made a 16. The second time I took my DAT, I made a 17. The third time I took my DAT, I made a 17. And the fourth time I took my DAT was when I finally made my 18 all around. And what were your scores your first and second time, Maddie?
So my scores the first time were 17 AA, and then my scores my second time were 18 AA. Now I guess we can talk about the cost of signing up for the exam, because I don't think we've mentioned that, right? I don't think
we have either. Okay, so when it comes to applying for your exam, I know that we've explained the sections of the DAT, but there is a point where you have to pay for this exam in order to take it. So the exam now, to take it, it costs $525. And this is paid up front before you schedule your test. So you need to have your dent pin. And then once you receive your dent pin, you're able to go in and apply to take the test. Now, when you apply to take this test, it does take a couple days for them to send the link for you to actually schedule the test. So you'll get your dent pin, you'll apply to take the test, you'll pay the $525 deposit, and then you'll wait a couple days and they will send another email that gives you a link to schedule the exam. Whenever you do apply to take it, I know people have said, oh, I haven't received anything from the ADA to take my test. It's usually in your spam folder. So make sure to check your spam folder after you apply, because I know that's where mine always ended up. So you'll go there. Usually, I think mine honestly took 24 hours. Most of the time, they say like 1 to 3 days. And then you can apply to take that test, and you'll just look up in your area, your zip code and everything, and then it'll pull up areas that have Prometric testing centers, and you can do a certain range of miles. So every testing center has different hours and they have different times that the test is available. There could already be people who have taken that day up, but you can go from a range from I think it's 30 to 90 days, and you can see which test date would be best for you. Me personally, there were 2 different options I had when I did sign up to take mine. One was to take my test at 8 a.m. Another was to take my test around 1 o'clock. And I had another time where I was able to take my test around 5. So I know there are some
PM. Oh my gosh.
I know there are some places where there's different options. So I have taken my test at each one of those times. I would say the best time I've done is right in the morning. That's just how naturally your brain is just more alert first thing when you wake up. And as far
you will be worried all morning, all day long, waiting, anticipating, not being productive, and you'll be reviewing notes. But at that point, if what you don't know at that point, and what you don't, you don't. Mm-hmm. I don't think there is something that you can master day of exam or even the day before. Yes. And that's why a lot of people recommend not studying the day before. Go have a self-care day. Get a facial, get a massage, get a pedicure, take a nap, spend time with family, go out with friends, whatever that is. But I think that at that point, you've done what you need to do, and there is nothing in those final hours that can really alter or change your score for the better. I think just it's more important to just get the rest, mentally prepare. And I agree with Dominique. I think taking the soonest or earliest availability for that day would be the best thing to do, even if you're not a morning person, because 5 o'clock at night, I would just be a hot mess. Like I would, I wouldn't even be eating and I would be starving because I would just be full of nerves. But that's just, yeah, me personally.
Yep. So totally up to you, whatever you think would be best. And actually, I don't think it was 1 o'clock. I think I had one that was scheduled at 11 a.m. It was like 8:11, and then I had one that was at like 5. So yeah, it definitely just depends on how you feel you would do best. But every single testing center offers different options. But there is something else and a little nugget that I want to share that was so helpful to me moving forward into my test. So I didn't know what this was for my first 2 tests I took in Las Vegas, but when I moved and took my test out here to Oklahoma, or in Oklahoma, there is an option on there that offers you a free 30-minute test prep. It's like a mock test is what it's called, and it costs $30, which, if I, knowing myself, it is so nice to do this because it honestly takes a lot of the nerve out of when you are going to the testing center, especially for your first time. Pay the money and do it, because honestly, it helped me so much. Basically, what you do is you understand what the entire check-in process is like. They walk you through it. You get there, you have your paper, they take your ID, they have you remove any jewelry you're supposed to remove. You go through the metal detector. They have you sign the paper to check in. You go and you sit down at the desk, and then you get to see how the software is going to be set up for your test. And basically, it's like a 15-minute run through of like a fake mock DAT from the beginning, and it might pop up some questions, and it's like a tutorial of what the test will be like. I decided to do that for my first time testing here in Oklahoma. And it's nice too, because you get to be more comfortable with your drive to the testing center. So day of, you're not like, where do I go? You can get all of that stuff out of the way, know exactly where you're supposed to go. And it's just a lot more comforting moving into it, because it feels like this isn't the first time you're doing it. So I highly recommend paying that $30 to do that mock run through. It is very, very helpful.
Yeah, that is something I didn't utilize, but would have helped my nerves tremendously if I would have, because I did each of my exams at 2 different Prometric locations, strictly because I just needed to go in at a certain time frame and I had to travel to which one had a better opening for my schedule. So now we're going to dive into a little bit about the different platforms available to use to study to help your learning or preparing for the dental admissions test. So one is called DAT Booster, another is called DAT Bootcamp. Dominique and I both use DAT Bootcamp, but let's just start with DAT Booster. So there are different course offerings for DAT Booster. There is a premium membership. It costs nearly $400. It's $399. And that is good for 90 days. So the 3 months that you typically would need to study. It gives you access to most of the DAT boosters materials. And then there is another course offering that is called their premium membership, and that costs $699 and is good for 180 days. And that would give you access to all of their materials. Now, when it comes to DAT Bootcamp, again, the one that Dominique and I used every single time we studied, and I would say is probably the more common study material that students lean towards, is the DAT Bootcamp. And DAT Bootcamp is awesome, and it has a ton of material. I think everything in there is nothing but amazing and is going to be seen on your exam in one question or another. So DAT Bootcamp, as of April 2024, costs $519 for the Pro membership, which is 90 days access, and then $919 for the Plus membership, which is 180 days of access with an additional 5 full-length practice tests. Now, both the Pro and the Plus do come with practice tests, 10 to be exact, but just the Plus has the 5 additional. In my opinion, I mean, take this with a grain of salt. I think it's a little overkill, but that's also coming from someone who scored an 18. So I don't know, but that is a good chunk of money. And there are so many questions, so much material, even just on the cheaper pro account that you could purchase. And I'm looking on the website now, and it says you can even do afterpay. So it's either 4 payments of $130 a month about, or 4 payments of $230. So it just depends on what is best for you and your pocket. But I think that those are really great resources, and always, always, always use a discount code. There are discount codes out there. So you can Google it or go onto DAT Bootcamp Facebook page, or even your favorite dental influencer. Typically, they have a code or an account. Sometimes you can go through your pre-dental society at your school. There is always a discount code. So it's just up to you to do a little bit of digging to find it, because you should never have to pay full price for these platforms. They cost a lot of money. The test itself costs a lot of money. So really, at the end of the day, you're going to spend at least around $1,000 to study for this test.
Yes, and these are just more of the well-known options. There are plenty other options. I know Kaplan is one. However, I would say most students that are studying to take this test, Kaplan can be very overkill. Like I purchased the Kaplan DAT book, and it is so thick. I honestly did not even use it because it's just so much material that they try and cram in. And me personally, I'm more of a visual learner. So on DAT Bootcamp, they have videos that you can watch and you learn with pictures and everything. And for me, that worked a lot better. But maybe you are someone that's textbook and you like to read the words and you like to just read it on your own without seeing anything. That might be more your style. But there are some supplemental options as well. One specifically I know I've mentioned on here before is Chad's videos. And Chad's videos is a godsend for me. It helped me so much in my sciences. I was actually offered a list of other options after I talked to the student program coordinator at OU prior to being accepted for my next DAT whenever I was taking my last one, because I, was not doing as well as I could have with the materials I was using. So I added in Chad's videos, and you can just type in Chad's videos. I think it's like chadsprep.com. But for Chad's prep, for the DAT prep, it's $60 a month. And this is recurring. So after the 3 months, if you were going to use it, it's $180 for Chad's videos. And this does offer help in the sciences, including, I believe, QR as well. So it's not everything, but it does offer you the main natural sciences, which is what I needed most help in. And it is so fantastic. I cannot speak more highly of this platform. I loved it so much. It was so well put together, very straightforward. It offered you test questions right after. So it really did quiz you well. And I honestly thought a lot of the questions from Chad's videos, they were worded very similarly to how my DAT tests were. Granted, every single test is different. There's no same test. You will get new questions every single time. And it's just a toss up of, are they going to be more challenging? Are you going to have a more mild test? It's just very different. So I know Chad's videos is another one of those supplementals that is really great that you can always just add into DAT Bootcamp or DAT Booster. Something else that people use are like the Anki flashcards or Anki, those flashcards. I know a lot of people do enjoy that. Even Quizlet, people have made pre-tests on like Quizlet, and you can even go in there and use those flashcards. So a lot of the things most people are probably using for undergrad can also be used during your DAT test prep. But the main two that we would say is the DAT Bootcamp and the DAT Booster.
Yeah, and she's not even sponsored. She just loves Chad's videos that much.
Chad's videos.
Sponsor her, Chad.
Yes.
I personally used Ninja Nerd. I love Ninja Nerd. I used him during my master's program. It's all free on YouTube or whatever that is. There's, Professor Dave Explains. There's Amoeba Sisters. If you know, etc. There's so many free resources online. But I know Chad's videos helped Dominique tremendously. Ninja Nerd was great for me for biology, but whatever helps you at the end of the day. On DAT Bootcamp, there's Dr. Mike when it comes to chemistry sections, and he helped me tremendously. So whatever videos or however you learn, do what is best for you. I think next we can talk about the kind of the retake policy, as well as if you need to push back the exam. And Dominique, you're a little bit more familiar with this, so maybe you want to dive into this section. I think it would be probably better for our listeners.
Sure, no problem. Yes, I am all too familiar with this. I had to retake this test 3 times. Well, 4 times, I guess you could say, but 3 retakes. So, whenever you take your DAT and you schedule to take it, from the time that you take it, you have 6 months to take this test. So, if you schedule to take your test in July, you have until January. Or if you schedule to take your test in May, like just to apply to take the test in May, you have until November. So you have 6 months total that you can book your test. So, along with that, once you take your test, in order to retake the test, you have to wait 60 days in between. So, if I choose to take my test June 1st, I cannot retake my DAT until August 1st. So, you have to wait the full 60 days in order to take your test again. Now, you have the ability to take this test 3 times. After the third time, you have to receive a letter from a school that says you can take this test again. So I know I've mentioned this before, but you have to reach out to a school, have a meeting with someone. I personally had a meeting with the student program coordinator. She approved writing a letter for me. Once I got that letter in my email and received it, I had to send this into the ADA in order for them to open the test up for me again, to show that the school was asking for me to take the test again. You can't just apply to take it on your own. You need someone of higher ups to approve you taking the test again, and for a certain reason. So once that happens, the amount of times that you can take your test within a year is 4 times total. After your fourth time, you have to wait 12 months in order to take a fifth test if you were to take a fifth test. I pray none of you ever have to get to that point, but I do know people who have taken this test 5-6 times. So just know that there are protocol and certain rules and regulations that they follow as far as rescheduling the test. So I'm just going to break it down one more time, more simplified. When you first apply to take your test, you have 6 months to take it. In between taking your first test and retaking it 60 days, you can only take up to 4 tests per year. After the fourth test, you have to wait 12 months. And along with taking it that fourth time, you still have to receive another letter from a school. So you do have the option, because I did have this option. You can spend, I can't remember how much it is. It's like you're able to write an appeal to keep you from waiting the 12 months, but they have since changed their rules of this, because this was how it had to be when taking your fourth test. But now they've made it, once you've taken 4, you have to wait 12 months to take the fifth. But I had to sign and write a full 1-page paper of what I would do differently moving forward in order for them to appeal the 12-month waiting period. That way I could take it sooner, because in my circumstance, I would have had to wait another gap year completely in order to even take my test again. So there's a lot of nitty gritty stuff within all of that, and there are fees to pay, and there's a chance that if you apply to take your test, let's say you get to like a month out and you're like, I don't think I'm going to be ready in a month, there are certain day periods where if it's 60 days out, you get to move your test for like $25. When it's 3 weeks out, you can move your test for $60. But then if you get to that like 7 something day period, it's like $125. Now those were, estimated prices when we were going through this, but it's since been a couple of years. And I know the very first time I even applied to take my DAT, it only cost $485. And now it's $525. So all of these fees and stuff we're saying, like they can become more expensive. So like we said before, just be in the mindset that this is an investment. It's not cheap, and it will cost you money out of pocket. I will say, if you do end up being in my circumstance, I know me personally, and I'm only sharing this because I want you to know the reality of what this can look like for your pockets. I know at this point, from taking the DAT 4 times, scheduling DAT boot camp 4 times, having to pay for extensions on DAT boot camp multiple times, honestly, every time, I'm pretty sure, using Chad's videos, applying to school 3 different times, taking extra classes. I even paid for tutoring at one point. That was like $1,200. All of these things, I have easily spent over $12,000 on this process. And I know that's not typical for people, but I just want you to understand, like, while yes, it is a pain in the rear to spend all this money, the career you are going into, if this is truly something you want to do and a dream you want to make happen, it is an investment. And you need to have that word in the back of your head. It's not a burden, it's an investment. Your career will pay you back tenfold if you truly care about this and it's truly something you want to do. So for me, I'm like, that's okay. It's an investment. It's a pain, of course, and it really hurts to pay all that money and to let go of, at the time, $482 more to pay for a DAT again. But just know, like, it is an investment and it's not a cheap process. And I know people will spend 10 grand on one application cycle because they choose to apply to that many schools. So don't feel like you have to spend all that money, because I know countless of people who have spent way less and they have gotten into school. But I just want it to be realistic that if you are in similar shoes to my journey and you have had to do all of this, or let's say in the future, this is what ends up happening, that you do understand the investment that it is.
So hopefully hearing, Dominique spending that much, me spending, however much money as well, having to retake it twice, learn from us, try to just take it once, put all your eggs in that study basket and really hone in and focus. And hopefully you only have to pay once and save yourself a lot of headache and financial stress. But if not, also, we are living proof that you can retake, you can still get into dental school with maybe not the most ideal score, because as we always say, you are much more than just a number. So, and I am very notorious, as my family and friends know, for pushing back my test date. When it comes to the end, I think it's okay to feel like you are not ready. Some students are like, oh, I know I'm ready. I was never one of those students. I was always like, oh, I know I could improve here. I know I haven't covered this chapter yet, or whatever. Ideally, you do get through all of the material. But if you're just shy a couple of chapters in the bio section or whatever, but you're just burnt out, you're like, at this point, I just need to take the exam. And that's when you know you're ready. You may not feel ready, but when you are emotionally done with the exam is probably when you should go and take it. So I just want to end, we just want to end this episode just by giving you guys just some little tips of how you can mentally prepare for such a rigorous exam, which I think, I'm not a breakfast person, but I think having breakfast is very important. Just getting something in your stomach. You're using a lot of brain power in this exam, and you do not want your stomach rumbling and being, noisy for your neighbors and distracting for yourself, because no one should take this test hangry. So get a little protein bar or shake or something, some eggs, bacon, whatever that breakfast looks like, and definitely eat beforehand, as well as sleep. You're going to be tossing and turning. It's going to be really, the pre-DAT nerves set in the night before. Lay out your clothes ahead of time, set yourself up for success, and definitely just try to get a good night's rest and not be rushed, and know where your testing center is. Give yourself amount of time beforehand to go in. There may be a line of students because they're all taking the exam at 8 a.m., for example. And so give yourself plenty of time. I would go at least 20 minutes before the actual test starts. Honestly, probably 30 minutes before, to associate and familiarize yourself with the area, and bring healthy snacks or a lunch during the break time. Stretch, walk around, move around, because your body is sitting hunched over, just all of your power, trying to recall everything, and to just give this test your all can be really straining on your body. So get up, stretch, don't forget to breathe. You got this.
Yes, I think all of those tips were exactly what I would say. I packed a lunch the night before. I made sure I had everything together, your ID, all of your identification that you need. I do think they suggest getting there 30 minutes before your test. I think it says that like on the paperwork, just because like Maddie said, you don't know, there could be a line. I one time have gone in and I've been the first one to be in line, no one in front of me. And then I've also had times where there's been like 5 people who are signing up to start their tests. So it really just depends what day your test is and when everyone else is in there. So definitely would say have the snacks, bring water with you, and make sure you have all of that stuff the night before. Don't go scrambling the morning of. That is so stressful. And if you decide to not take the mock test and go through that, my other suggestion would be to drive to the prometric testing center. That way you have a route, you know which way to go on a separate day other than your test. That way you just know where you're headed. Even like walking up there and you're like, where is it? Like if you have to ask people, because I know my prometric testing center and one of the buildings, it was in a building that housed many other offices, and it was on a certain
mine
floor.
too.
And like this one here in Oklahoma, same thing, but it was like in this really weird like hallway wrapped all the way around the back. Like some of them can be very confusing to find, so you don't want to be scrambling the day of. That also just adds to your nerves. Like this is a very trying test, as we've mentioned, and I'm sure you've come to understand. You want to just limit as much stress as you can so that you can be fully focused on this material, so that you can be an absolute rock star and kill it. And we do know there is so much more to this test, but we're just hopeful that this gives you a slight summary of what you will be experiencing. I know we didn't get too much of studying for the test, but I just personally feel like that comes from a person-to-person basis. Both of the options for testing platforms, DAT Bootcamp, DAT Booster, they offer study schedules on there, and it is free will for you to follow it to a T. I know Maddie and I were not able to do that. It's very rigorous when you do it that way, but I know some people have been just fine and they've been able to. So it is completely customizable for you, however your lifestyle is. My first 2 times I studied full-time for 3 months. My second time I studied part-time with studying, and then I was part-time working. And then my last time I was working full-time and then studying all the other amount of time that I had. So this is truly whatever is going to work best for you. No one does it the exact same. So just know that if you are doing what's best for you, that's the most important thing. It's the other thing of like comparison is the thief of joy. Don't compare yourself to what other people are doing. If you have those people you can study with, awesome. If not, we completely understand that this can feel very isolating, and make sure you're taking care of yourself at the same time. Don't lose yourself in studying, but also keep in mind like short-term sacrifice for long-term gain. That is something I told myself every single day studying for this test, because it can feel very monotonous because it seems like you're doing the same thing every single day. You're learning material that you maybe have already learned in undergrad, or you're learning material you've never seen before. Because I know some people haven't even gotten to their upper level biology classes at this point when they are taking the test. So just know that there are resources for you. Maddie and I are here to answer questions if you have them. We know this can be very confusing, but you are not alone. There are so many other people who have done this before you, which the great part about that is that you know it's possible. So know it's possible, believe in yourself, short-term sacrifice for long-term gain. You will get to your dreams. You just have to put in the work, put in the effort, and stay determined. It's going to happen.
Yeah, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We are Dental Mentors Podcast on Instagram. We have a YouTube as well. Please like and subscribe or follow our account. We would really appreciate it. And as always, we are always here to help and answer any way we can regarding the DAT, the admissions process to dental school, and everything in between. So thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode, and we will see you guys next week. Have a good one.
Bye, y'all.